Joining me now is Miranda Devine, columnist at the New York Post. Miranda, good morning to you. First of all, we've got a few issues to cover here. I want to talk about Mad Dog Mattis. He's released a book and I'm sure it's going to be interesting. I haven't read it yet, but what are the details of it?
Good morning, Pete. Yes, it's just been released today. Mad Dog Mattis, the former Secretary of Defence to Donald Trump. And look, he hasn't said anything really rude or negative about Donald Trump, hardly anything at all, even though it was Donald Trump who caused him to resign from his job because he wasn't happy with what Donald Trump was doing about getting out of Syria. But he's reserved his real venom for former President Barack Obama because Mad Dog Mattis says that Barack Obama completely bungled the Middle East strategy, pulling out of Iraq too soon and empowering ISIS to then grow up into the menace that it was, Islamic State. And then further compounding that issue in Syria by saying, if you remember back in, I think, 2012, that there was a red line that could not be passed, and that was about using chemical weapons. And of course, the dictator Assad used chemical weapons, killed several hundred of his own people, and then Barack Obama did nothing. There were no consequences. So Mad Dog Mattis is absolutely furious about that.
Yeah, I mean, that right there is an example of where, is the classic example of where Barack Obama's critics point to his failure when it comes to foreign policy, because you know, he shirt-fronted, as Tony Abbott would have said. He shirt-fronted just about the leader of Syria, talked tough, and then didn't do anything about it. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has talked tough, and that's the only real foray into foreign affairs that he's done at the moment by bombing, you know, several different enemy targets, I suppose, military targets. But moving on. Anyway, Miranda, what about this other story, Hollywood's new McCarthyism? So you had Donald Trump, first of all. Now you've got Oprah Winfrey, who've had a crack at Deborah Messing. Her plan, what, she wants to blacklist anyone who attends a fundraiser for Donald Trump.
It's really incredible, the hide of these Will and Grace stars, Deborah Messing and Eric McCormack. They caught wind through a story in The Hollywood Reporter that there was going to be, during Emmy week next month, a fundraiser in Beverly Hills for Donald Trump. And they decided that they were going to name and shame whoever attended it. They called on Twitter to have all the list of attendees made public. And they said, so we can no longer work with them. And so everyone else can know that they should be blacklisted. It is back to the old McCarthyist days and completely illiberal. Incredible that these Hollywood stars are so instinctively illiberal, but also that they're proud to display it. And good on old Oprah today. She said that that was just a bridge too far, and she berated them for it. And of course, Donald Trump was on Twitter giving them a good old tongue lashing, as he usually does.
You talked about Mattis's book, Miranda, but there's also this other book that's coming out, and it compares the current First Lady, Melania Trump, and Michelle Obama, the previous First Lady. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, I wrote my column about this in the New York Post yesterday. It's really very unfair to be comparing Melania Trump, who's been there for, you know, half a term, to Michelle Obama, who was there for 2 full terms and also got pretty much glowing press. Melania Trump has had just an unrelenting personal campaign of just vituperation and vilification and demonisation of her. She really hasn't put a foot wrong. She's, you know, speaks 5 languages. She's not an airhead former model and nothing else. She dresses beautifully. She's always very stylish. She dresses in American brands very patriotically, and yet she's never had that sort of rails run that Michelle Obama had with the fashion press, particularly Anna Wintour's Vogue magazine, which has just snubbed her. Just a week ago, Anna Wintour was asked by somebody, a reporter, you know, what do you think of Melania Trump's style? And she pointedly refused to answer that question and segued into a complete irrelevancy, talking about Michelle Obama being stylish, and she was asked again and did the same thing. So it's a deliberate campaign to either ignore Melania Trump or treat her like some sort of a fool. Last year and the year before, even her Christmas decorations for the White House, which were very lovely and tasteful in the normal colours that you have at Christmas, red, white and green. But, you know, she was pilloried for those as well. So she cannot win. And I think it's very unfair. And although this book purports to be a sort of a fair handling of both of their public images, the public images are created by the media. And one First Lady has had unrelenting hostility from the media, and the other one was fated from start to finish.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there. Excuse me. I mean, I think Melania Trump has handled herself with such grace and dignity despite everything that's happened around her, everything that really comes out of her husband and the situation that he's got himself into, both professionally and personally, and she's always a staunch supporter of his, and as I said, always handles herself with plenty of grace. Just finally, what about this Only in America story? I've got to get your thoughts on this. Someone has brought a small horse onto a plane. We've got a photograph, I think, to show you. Can you tell us what the details are?
Yes, well, I mean, there's been this movement in America for their airlines to allow people to have emotional support animals. You know, if they have anxiety or some sort of mental health issue, they like to bring their dogs or their cats. But now it's moved on to small horses, which aren't that small. Yeah. As you can see,
Would that just be a pony? Am I silly for saying that?
Emotional support horse. I think it's a Shetland pony. It's a you know, one of these miniature horses, but they're bigger than the biggest dog you could imagine.
That's right.
And this horse took up a lot of space, and you know, on takeoff and landing, it's trying to stand up and keep its balance, and it kept on bumping into the back of the seats in first class. So look, her fellow passengers weren't very happy, and I look, seriously, what do you do about if the horse wants to go to the toilet on board?
Yeah.
You know, various other little delicate situations. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It's tough enough to fly domestically in America. It's absolute hell on wheels, and to add animals to the mix is just crazy.